Hello, everyone. Good afternoon and welcome to this session on UOW Malaysia KDU's micro-credentials, where I'll be sharing with you our learning journey and lessons learned. My name is Mi-chelle and I'm a senior lecturer at UOW Malaysia KDU. I'm also the head of Department of Languages, a course designer and a teacher trainer. Before I begin, I'd like to thank Open Learning for inviting me to this symposium and giving me an opportunity to share our experience in designing and developing micro-credentials. I'd also like to thank all of you for spending your afternoon with me. I hope that by the end of this session, you'll be able to gather some ideas and inspirations on how to get started on your own micro-credentials. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A tab and I'll answer them at the end of my presentation. You can also provide your feedback or comments in the chat. So you might be asking or wondering, why should you listen to me? Our journey has not been a long and winding one, but it has been one very bumpy ride. However, we have arrived at a very wonderful destination and the sense of accomplishment is certainly fulfilling. This didn't come easy. We had many difficult lessons. I'd say difficult lessons, not failures, for I see each one as a step closer to what we want to achieve. And of course, along the journey, we also had little joys in between. For example, when we finally figured out how some technical stuff work. We reflected on all our ups and downs that brought us to this success today of having our micro-credential listed as an open cred. This is truly a huge milestone for us. Therefore, I hope our little story will inspire you to begin your own journey and be cautious of the nooks and crannies along the way. I will structure my talk today into these three parts. I'll begin with our story, and then I'll talk a little bit about our strategy, and lastly, I'll let you into our little secrets. So our first attempt in creating online courses was way back in 2019. In line with the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2015-2025, we wanted to help build a nation of lifelong learners, which is shift number 3, while creating a sustainable higher education landscape through one of the shifts, that is shift 9, globalized online learning. At the same time, we also hope to answer to the urgent call for action of the Sustainable Development Goals. Typically, we were responding to SDG 4, that is quality education. And that is to ensure inclusive and equitable quality education and promote lifelong learning opportunities for all. We too believe that everyone should and can be given an opportunity in higher education. And thus, we decided to embark on this journey of offering online courses to those in the workforce who did not have the opportunity at higher education, as well as learners from all over the world who may yet have the chance to travel abroad for studies. So we started to create an online course then. The entire team in my department was involved in developing the course content. And unfortunately, at the same time, that year I was assigned to another role. And I wasn't able to be directly involved and contribute to the team. There were 8 academic staff working on the course then. After a year, some content was created. However, we hadn't had a fixed platform then, as there was a change in the management of the institution. Also, as the academic team had no prior experience and very limited knowledge on online course delivery, the content created was not sufficient for an online course. Therefore, after a year, we had no online course. I reflected, what went wrong? Why couldn't we deliver the project outcome? So I pondered and listed the issues we had. Number one, we had no dedicated platform for such online courses. So we were not sure what could be included or excluded from the course content. We had no idea what learning activities we could do. We don't know how to assess students' learning outcomes online. Number two, we lack knowledge on online courses, technically and pedagogically. The team had very limited technical and pedagogical knowledge on online course design and delivery. Number three, there was no clear plan as there was lack of leadership and direction in the project. And number four, there were too many content creators in a team for one course. So in 2020, I decided to take over the project and make it work. I had to make it work as I was instructed to. It was the department's KPI. So I knew I had to keep to the promise that I would deliver the result. Well, then came the lockdown, and we had to direct all our focus onto our daily but unusual class delivery. At that time, just like all other institutions in the world, we had to put extra effort and time in rethinking and redesigning our physical lessons to suit the virtual learning environment. So the entire team had no time left to restart on this micro-credential project. And that was 2020. 2020 was gone in a flash. Another year of undelivered results. And then at the start of 2021, I decided it was time to relook at our project. And so I picked up from where I left at the beginning of 2020, and I reflected again on the cost of the win attempt. I told the team that we had to make it work this time. I spoke to them to get their buy-in, because without their commitment and support, this project would not be possible at all. So I re-strategized. This time, I had a few clusters. Although I know the word cluster is not a very positive word in this situation now, yeah, but that's what we call it then. Yeah. So each cluster actually had to work on one micro-credential. So as a working team this time was smaller, each played a very important role in ensuring that the initiative would not be in vain again. We restarted with 3 clusters with the aim of successfully creating 3 micro-credential courses by the middle of the year. Bearing in mind the issues we had earlier, we were more cautious and aware of our shortcomings this time. A platform was decided, and the team was already quite well versed with the platform, especially after experiencing teaching online during the pandemic. So this time, we knew what we could and could not do in the platform. We knew what kind of learning activities we could create in the platform. We knew how students' learning outcomes could be assessed through the platform. But still, we lack the knowledge on micro-credential courses. And honestly, as the project leader for all 3 micro-credential courses, I myself was not fully equipped with all the knowledge and skills to create online courses either. I had never created an online course before, so I was well aware of my limited knowledge and skills, technically and pedagogically. But I knew I had to start somewhere, and it was actually rather scary to be leading the team when I didn't really have the knowledge or know-how. So I learned from other experts, and one of my gurus is none other than Prof. Karim. I watched and learned from him. I referred to the resources that he shared. I surely have learned a lot from him. And Prof, if you're listening today, thank you very much for being the light at the end of the tunnel. I also joined many other online courses offered through Coursera, EDX, FutureLearn, and Udemy, just to name a few. Seeing how other course providers structure their course content gave me ideas on how I could structure mine. And as I experienced these courses as a learner, I noted that video content is quite central in online courses. The presence of the instructor in the course actually made a difference in my learning. And so I decided, after doing some reading, that our micro-credential courses must have the instructor's presence in the video content. And that means recording not just the slides, but also the face of the instructor. While this could be done very easily with the technology that we had already then, what I envisioned was not just the recording of the visuals, be it slides using PowerPoint or Keynote or Canva, with the video appearing at the corner of the screen, but one which the instructor appears in front of the slide, interacting as much as possible with the content of the slide. So this is what I wanted it to look like. So as anyone would have expected, there was some resistance. Some academics were not very comfortable having themselves being recorded on camera. Some expressed that it was just all too difficult to do. So I had to explain to them that doing this not only helps to stimulate the actual feeling of learning in a physical space, but also increases engagement with the learners. So it took some convincing before they were willing to try. Like I've mentioned earlier, I had no technical knowledge on how to do that. So that was one steep learning curve for me. I had to learn very quickly. I researched and I learned. I tried out various methods to find one which is the easiest and best for the team to learn to do it quickly too. So, Mr. Google and Miss YouTube, they are my BFFs. There were so many rounds of trial and error till I got the right one. I have forgotten how many times I had to re-record certain videos just to get it right. I not only had to learn how to use the apps, but also other important aspects of video recording, such as audio quality, video quality, lighting, positioning of the object, and not forgetting post-editing of the video. So after learning all that, I conducted workshops to train team on how to use the apps and also the equipment. But then the lockdown happened again. So life happens, yeah, c'est la vie. You know, when people say when life gives you lemons, you make lemonade. So we had to make do with what we have. We still had to continue working on it, albeit remotely. The team had to learn how to set up their own space with the best lighting in their environment to record their videos. So my training was also done online. Due to the situation, the team actually learned very quickly what should or should not be done when setting up their own space for video recording. So in hindsight, I can see now that COVID-19 was a blessing in disguise. It actually strengthens the team's understanding of and skills in online delivery. Additionally, we also created a blueprint for each micro-credential. Every single detail in regard to the course is written in the blueprint. This living document was the guide that we used along the journey until the course was completed. We constantly revised the details as we work on the course content. We met very often to discuss, to deliberate, and also to debate on what should or should not be included in the course. And we also talk about how we wanted the course to look like. So we thought we were working on the right path this time, and we were almost completing the course content. And then we were told that we had to change platform as a result of a change in management. So the new platform introduced to us is open learning. While open learning was not entirely new to me, neither was I very familiar with all its features. So I had to learn again. I attended various workshops conducted by Open Learning. They were very helpful as I learned its features, and the types of learning activities and assessments we could do there. But it was not exactly the same as our previous platform. So we couldn't just copy the course over. We had to rethink and redesign our course content so that it could fully utilize the features to maximize students' learning experience. Thanks to the pandemic this time, as the team was way better in their technological knowledge, it was manageable. Also, the blueprint that we had allowed us to easily relook at all our content and restructure them into the online open learning platform. While the switch and the building of the course again was time-consuming, it was doable. The help rendered by open learning also eased our course development on the platform. Help was always given when we needed via the chat and also the open learning help community pages. So despite all the challenges we faced, we still managed to complete the course within the expected time. To us, that was quite an achievement. But when I was approached by Open Learning to consider listing our course as OpenCred, I was a little unsure if our course was good enough, as we were just amateurs in creating micro-credentials. But I see it as a good opportunity to have an outsider to review our course. So I submitted the course for review. To our amazement, we met all the criteria for an OpenCred. With feedback and suggestions for improvement, we made further enhancement to the course. And the product that you see now in the platform is the fruit of our labor. You can access to the course. I think they have shared the link there in the chat or using the QR code here. So what is our strategy? I'm going to break it down into these 4 questions here. First one, how do we decide what course we wanted to create? When we started back in January this year, I actually left it to each cluster to decide on what they were interested in doing, because I believe that in order for them to stay committed to this entire project, they must enjoy doing it. However, I recommended that they consider the courses that we already have and to break them down into a few short courses, which is micro-credentials. The reason for my recommendation is simple. If we already have the course content and materials and a clear familiarity of the course content, it will be so much easier to create a micro-credential. Also, at that time, strangely, I imagined that one day in Malaysia, it will be all possible to have a learner collect his badges that will eventually lead to some form of recognition or exemption for a course in the university. I had no idea about OpenCred at that time. I came to know about OpenCred only in June this year. And at that time, we were kind of like done with the project already. We also kept in mind that micro-credentials should meet the needs of the industry. Now that was easy, as UOW Malaysia has always prided itself in producing graduates who hit the ground running. So our courses were somewhat designed to meet the needs of the industry. Next, how do we decide on the course learning outcomes for our micro-credentials? Once the clusters have decided on the course, we look at the course learning outcomes. As a general rule of thumb, one micro-credential should serve one learning outcome. However, I must say that it is not a hard and fast rule. So for our course, we had 3 learning outcomes, and thus we decided that we will create 3 micro-credentials for this. This course that we are dissecting is actually a common English course named Oral Communication. So looking at the selected course learning outcome, we created this micro-credential discussions at work made easy. And this is based on the original, the source course, the first CLO, which is communicate effectively by contributing meaningfully to a discussion. And then from here, we work on the micro-credential course learning outcomes. So again, from here, we listed 3 learning outcomes. So this is somewhat like the lesson learning outcomes of our original course. Next, how do we decide on the assessments for our micro-credentials? The assessments are based on the course learning outcomes. However, we had to really think hard on assessing the learners in the online environment. As this course was on speaking skills, we had a tough time designing the assessments, especially the final one on testing the ability to use functional expressions to navigate a discussion. Ideally, we would want the learner to be a participant of a discussion. Now, that's hard since this is a self-paced course. We thought for a very long time. And one day, I suddenly had this idea of simulating a group discussion where the learner and the instructors will be participants. But then we were still in lockdown and working from home. So instead of a physical discussion, we simulated an online discussion. The instructors had to self-record their lines at home. While it may be easier to be just on Zoom and record with all the instructors, the quality may not be as good due to unstable internet connection and recording platforms. And as I've mentioned earlier in my story, I had very limited technical knowledge and skills. So it took some learning to actually merge all the videos together, like you see here now on the screen, to simulate an online discussion. As our lighting and also audio quality were not quite the same because we were working in our own home, our own space, and definitely not professional, I also had to learn how to balance everything up so that it really does look like an online discussion. So we're really happy about the outcome as we felt that it is able to measure the intended learning outcome. Next, how do we decide on the learning activities for our micro-credentials? Well, we believe that the course content should be highly interactive and able to help the students in achieving the learning outcomes. Therefore, we break down our course content into a few topics, with each one targeted to meet one learning outcome of the course. For example, in this course, we had 3 topics for 3 learning outcomes. So for this one, it's on presenting information, and it meets the CLO 1, which is present information in a clear and succinct manner. The second one is navigating a discussion using functional expression. This is to meet CLO 2 of the course, to use functional expressions to navigate a discussion. And the third one is to meet CLO 3, make a group discussion by negotiating differing perspectives. Right. So let's move on to some key takeaways for you. What's our secret? Number 1, break down a conventional course into a few micro-credentials. First, look at the current course that you have, look at the course learning outcomes, and think about how you can break them apart. Like I've mentioned earlier, as a general rule of thumb, 1 course learning outcome to 1 micro-credential, but that's really not a hard and fast rule. You may have 2 course learning outcomes that is delivered in 1 micro-credential. So it's really up to the team and the subject experts to decide. Number 2, set up a few clusters. Have 1 cluster, 1 small group to work on 1 micro-credential. And always remember to get buy-in from the team members before starting the project. In my opinion, it is, I'm not saying that it's not possible to create a micro-credential course on your own. You can do it, but I believe it will be better if it's a collaboration, because when you are working in your team, you actually bounce ideas and you see things from different perspectives. Number 3, which is one of the most important things, have a living blueprint. What we do is we have the document set up in Google Doc, which is by far the easiest and most easily accessed document. Yeah, and we constantly fall back on the plan before making any decision on the course content. Whatever that we want to do, it is listed very, very clearly in the course document. To every single minor thing, as in this particular activity, what exactly are we going to do? What are the questions that we're going to list down? What are the apps, the tools, and everything that we use? And number 4, lastly, meet up frequently with the team. You need to talk. Everyone in the team needs to be in sync. Communication is key to the success of the project. We really can't be working in silos. Although, as how we have been, the profession teaching seems to be in centuries, working in silos. But then, when we're talking about a project like this, it is best, like I've mentioned just now, to work in a team. You bounce your ideas, you see things from different perspectives. Sometimes you want to actually test it out and see whether these things work or not. And as a team, when we meet up, we also provide feedback on the slides that we are creating. We actually meet up with each other every 2 weeks, and we have always like a list of agendas that what we will do in that particular session for that day. So say if this session that we're going to meet is where we will all prepare our slides. So everyone who is involved will prepare the slides, and then during the session, we will go through the slide one by one to check for typo, to check the content, to make sure that the content is really aligned to the course learning outcome and also will help the learner to achieve the course learning outcomes. We also make comments on the graphics, the color, and so on. Even down to the bits of alignment of the words, alignment of the picture, all these things. Yeah. So it has really taken a lot of work from the entire team of academics. So to date, with this workflow that I shared with you and the strategies, we have completed 5 micro-credentials, with 1 being listed in OpenCred Marketplace just last week. So we have acing online interviews, we have English Get It Right, we have 2 courses for English for nursing. One is post-operative care, and the other one is admitting hospital patients. And of course, the one which is showcased today, discussions at work made easy, which is an OpenCred. So all this were created in a span of 6 months. So I hope my little story here has inspired you to embark on your journey or continue walking along that path. Thank you for staying with me to the end of my presentation. Lastly, I'd like to thank Open Learning for the platform and all the technical support rendered, and also for giving me a space to showcase our courses. Also, I'd like to thank the management for the trust and confidence in us. And last but not least, most importantly, I'd like to thank my team for believing in me and working tirelessly and continuously with me. Thank you very much. Right, so I will look at the Q&A now. So I have this question here from Marilyn. How did you manage to convince the rest of your team, especially those who are reluctant in the beginning, to come abroad on using a new platform like Open Learning? I must say the decision, like I mentioned just now, to change from our previous platform to Open Learning was decided by the management. So they had no choice, I had no choice, we had no choice but to learn how to use Open Learning. Yeah, so it wasn't, there was no choice, we just had to use it. Okay, so next question from Julius. What apps or software do you recommend for us to check out based on your experience? Audio, video, lighting. Okay, typically we usually source for freewares. Yeah. For audio, we don't really do much of the tuning except for sometimes to cut down the background noise and all. So for that, we use Audacity. In terms of video editing, also for that, we don't really highly edit our videos. Yeah, maybe just to merge some parts or to cut the bits here and there, the front and the tail of it. So for this kind of a very simple video editing, we use OpenShot. And lighting, well, generally, if you are in a space with pretty good sunlight coming in, you're quite fine. My room here, I don't really have sunlight, but the normal fluorescent light is pretty good now. So you can see it's pretty well lit. But I do have the light box for the area that is not so well lit, and also so that the instructor will be clearer, especially when we are doing the green screen recording, the chroma key. That one ideally is using a light box. But I know for some of my academic staff, using a normal ring light also works for them. So I think you have to test it out in your own space, your own environment, and see whether it works for you or not. So like I said earlier, we had many rounds of trial and error until we get the right one. Okay. Right. So another question by Julius. Are you using Prezi for your presentation today? Yes, you got it right. I'm using Prezi. Okay, cool. Any more questions? Do we have any more questions from the floor? How many people are there in your team? I had 8, and then after that I had 9, and then I have 8 again now. Okay, so still 8 now. These 8 are the ones who work tirelessly on all these micro-credential courses. And with these 8, they are broken into 3 groups. So there are like 2 to 3 members in the group. So plus myself, it's about like 3 to 4 in one cluster. So I would say it's a good size for a micro-credential course project. Did you and your team use 6 months to develop one MC? The 5 MCs that I showed you just now, they were all developed concurrently in that 6 months. So it was not 6 months for just one. How do I put it? So I had one group working on, for example, discussions at work. I had 4, including myself, 4, working on it for 6 months. But at the same time, I had the same people, but not all, working in another micro-credential project as well. So on average, I would say each one of them, they were involved in creating at least 2 courses at the same time during that 6 months. So if you were to interview any one of them, they will tell you it was chaotic. Personally, from my own experience, being the project leader for so many different projects at the same time, I was also going crazy, you know. So that's why I said the blueprint. The blueprint is the one that is really helpful to help you to stay focused and know what you're creating and why you're creating it and for what purpose. So you don't like get like stray away from the focus of the course. Okay. Right. Marilyn's question: how long has it been since you started your micro-credentials? Are there a lot of demand in your experience, seeing that you were the only one of the few pioneer universities that adopted micro-credentials? Honestly, we haven't really launched our micro-credentials yet, the one that you have seen it there. As I've mentioned, Discussions at Work has just been launched as an open cred just last week, and we haven't really officially launched it yet. So there are not many learners there yet. As I've mentioned, we are very new in this thing. So I count myself and my team, you know, in a way, lucky to have our course listed as an open cred, because we didn't expect that it will come so fast. Yeah. Any other questions? How was the change affected your learners? You mean the change in the platform? Is that what you mean, the change in the platform? Like I've mentioned just now, we haven't really sort of like sell our micro-credential courses to our learners yet, you know, when we were in our previous platform. So I wouldn't be really able to tell whether it has affected my learners or not. But I would say as a whole, from the way I have experienced it myself as a learner in open learning, okay, joining open learning courses, I think open learning is very user friendly. The way the things are, the layout, how it is displayed and all, I think it's very user friendly. Users can just simply go to wherever you want to get the information that you need. And of course, this has to be set up properly by the instructors. Okay, and as a person who has used open learning to set up micro-credential courses, I think open learning has all the features for a good micro-credential. Yeah, the tabs are quite easy to use. How you want to structure your pages is also quite easy. So I would say generally it's a good platform to use for micro-credentials. Okay, I have questions from James here. Do you need to pay the trainers for teaching MCP, or are they part of the full-time? Okay, so the academic staff, they are all full-time staff. So it's part of their job responsibility to create content. Okay. The minimum number is to reach before you can run. I think I've answered that question already. All right, okay. All right. Okay, thank you very much, Open Learning, for adding the remark there. Okay. Right. So like I mentioned, James, we haven't really, there is really no additional pay that is given to the the content creators at the moment. So we have no such thing as minimum number of students. Any other questions? Right, I can see the poll come up already. Okay, so once again, thank you very much for staying with me and listening to my presentation. I hope that you will have great success as well in creating your micro-credentials. And good luck and have a good evening. Thank you. Bye.